They're just now figuring out that the system is truly broken. And it's not just broken pertaining to our judicial justice system, it's broken in every other way imaginable. And of course, this coronavirus is what has brought all of this to the surface towards people understanding this. While I was out in California in 2008, I knew that the 99 percenters versus the 1 percenters was trying to alert the rest of us pertaining to how dangerous and how off-sided, how unbalanced that the system over here in America has truly become. Now, and only now, since the coronavirus has hit and Congress has decided to give people a tickle or a taste towards teasing people in that in which what they should have gotten from the government in regards to a $600 check, we are now starting to see the full developments of just exactly how off-sided, lopsided that this particular government has become in the past 15, 20, 25, 30 years. Once more, whenever you go back and look at what happened during the late 80s with our government speaking with a double-edged sword or a forked tongue, talking about peace, but yet now going to war pertaining to Desert Storm, Desert Shield, and of course against Saddam Hussein that didn't have no bombs of mass destruction that costed the American people over $6 trillion. This is the results from all of that. Whenever you have a runaway train that has basically been on a path of destruction since the late 80s, since basically Bill Clinton has left office, since they passed the free trade deal, since all the jobs has gone south, since everything has escalated the way that it has, you have a recipe of a catastrophe. The perfect storm. Please listen to what the commentator has to say today in regards to not just the coronavirus, not just the stimulus checks, but all of it in general. Because whenever you look at it in a broad view with deep, wide-minded people, when you look at it from a broad view, you understand just exactly what was going on in 2008, which was give or take about 12 years ago. And I personally think that God has permitted, allowed for this to come up onto us so that we can see how many people have fallen through the cracks towards seeing how many people have been abused, neglected, rejected by the system, towards the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. Now, you keep in mind that over in China, as I'm speaking, up until the coronavirus hit, there was an average of 2 people per day becoming millionaires, just in China alone. I don't know what was going on in other parts of the country, but just in China and China alone, there was over 2 people per day that was becoming multi-millionaires because China was using their labor force. They had weaponized their labor force in basically cutthroating everybody else in taking charge of the labor force, beginning probably before Bill Clinton ever passed the NAFTA free trade agreement deal. But just listen to what these commentators, as well as this interviewer, has to say in regards to the condemnation, the retribution that has fallen upon to the masses of society here, not only in America, but in other places like Europe, France, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Ireland, and other parts of the world. Whenever you have something that has been disproportionalized, the way that the Reagans and the Bushes disproportionalized the truth towards what actually occurred in conjunction towards how that the nuclear arms agreement ever got agreed upon in ending the Cold War pertaining to Russia, you're going to have irregularities such as Russia hacking into American affairs. You're going to have irregularities such as China doing the exact same job that ordinarily we was paying $40, $45, $50 an hour for, now that they're willing to do for basically nothing. It was a communist-controlled environment that said we will defeat the American people and never fire a shot. That was the very thoughts that Brezhnev had before Gorbachev. And that was the very other thoughts that our other adversaries was thinking too as well, that there is other ways that we can get to the American people without ever having to fire a shot. Since the coronavirus has hit this year, in the year of the Jubilee, we can now identify these tactics that are being used against us here in America towards basically putting not one, not two, but millions of people in the poorhouse. The bubble burst that occurred in 2008 done a great deal of damage. Especially whenever I was out there on the road traveling around from Kentucky to Florida, from Florida back to Kentucky, and then up into Denver, and then back out to North Carolina, back and forth to different places, paying as much as $4 and a half, $5 and a half a gallon for gasoline, literally put a few million people in the poorhouse. A few million people. It affected our economy. We had to do a bailout deal as Bush was leaving and Obama was coming into power. And believe it or not, Obama's administration, the Democrats, got the ball up and going and turned it around. How that they done that was by borrowing from Paul to pay Peter. You continue to draw money out of various places in the government, knowing that you're never going to be able to pay Paul back. You borrow from Paul to pay Peter. Even Reagan had that same analogy towards stimulating the economy by offering various things to the general public that basically stimulated the economy. Well, you can only do this so many times, especially whenever you look at how many times it has been done. And if you'll go back and look at us being $28 trillion in debt, not counting this last stimulus program that is now, I guess, going to be passed. It's about probably a third of the amount of money of what it should be. But whenever you continue to do this again and again and again, not only does the rich look down upon to the investors pertaining to a poor credit rating, but they look upon to a particular country that is negligent in handling its affairs. Once more, it's not that we have become negligent in our affairs, it's that we have been sabotaged. And we have been sabotaged by the conglomerates in the communist-controlled world in basically taking over the work labor force, weaponizing it against the American people. This interview that you're fixing to listen to helps to verify the very facts that I have been telling people about, and that my brother and I, David, put up a broken cross representing the system, because in reality, the cross don't have nothing to do with a person's salvation. It was what happened on the cross. It was who hung on the cross that had something to do with our salvation. The cross at the time was their system that they used to punish the bad people in penalizing them to death pertaining to capital punishment. Today, various states, they don't use the noose. They don't use the cross. They don't use the gas chamber. They don't use the firing squad. Today, they do things in a similar type form pertaining to legal injection, which basically accomplishes the same thing. It basically makes the heart explode to the point that the individual dies. But once more, we're not just pointing at one particular thing towards the broken cross being the broken system. We're talking about all of it in general across the board, looking at it through a wide viewing lens of how that the system has basically turned against itself, kind of like a dog returning back to its vomit. And now the system is destroying the very people that helped create the system to begin with. The system, listen to me, the system has turned against the people. And I know a lot of people say, well, that's the computer. That's the computer. No. The computer only knows what we put into the computer. If we program a computer a certain way, that's what the computer knows. Now, there are some proofs that the computer has become self-taught. And now that the beast is now self-programming itself through other tactics in the way that it's doing. Possible, but we still have control over the cord. We can still pull the cord on the computer and dismantle or dislodge the computer. We, the human race, are still in control of the computer. Or we are up until a certain degree. We know that if we pull the plug on the computer, we'll basically be cutting off our own noses to spite our faces, because we're trying to handle things in such of a broad perspective way, kind of like air flights. There would be no human way that we could bring in and take out as many air flights here, not only in America, but throughout the planet, if we did not have top-notch quality technology. We would constantly be running into one another. We would constantly be having delays. We would constantly be disrupted by calamities as far as air travel, and it would just be chaotic if we did not have the computer. So in ways, we have become hostages of the very monster that we have created, if we are going to continue to live, work, breathe, be entertained in a massive type form regarding the masses here up onto the planet. You keep in mind there's over 9 or 7, soon to be 8 billion people on the planet. That's a lot of people to have to accommodate. There's no way that we can function without the computer. So basically, we have been hijacked by the very instrument that we have now created. Just listen to this, and I'll come back with some more detail on the back end after you make your own conclusions about the system being broken.
Is what we gave them after giving them $1,200 10 months ago. It's infuriating, and thank you so much for having me. We need to be reminded that the House, Democrats in the House, passed the HEROES Act several months ago, which was in north of $3 trillion and provided $1,200 per month in terms of stimulus payments. I mean, when we look at $600 a month and $300 per week, after I pay my rent and pay my cable and pay my phone bill and do some food shopping, that's it. I'm done. Where's the next relief package going to come from? Now, let me be clear. I'm glad that we have money going directly to Americans. People are struggling and people need it. But we have to get right back to the table right after inauguration to make sure we get a more robust stimulus package going. But also, we begin to take steps towards rebuilding the American economy because too many people were living in poverty and hungry even prior to the pandemic.
One of the things that we've heard talked about is this thing called a K-shaped recovery. And I want to put that up on the screen to explain what we're talking about. We have record-setting stock markets right now. The investor class has done very, very well since March. Wealth for the top 600 people in America has increased by over $1 trillion. But if you're working class, you're working poor, or you're unemployed, this looks like what it is. It's a recession. We've never really confronted this kind of situation, but Congressman-elect Bowman, you know that that's how things have been going for the last 15 or 20 years, right? The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. This idea that a rising tide lifts all boats is simply not true. It lifts yachts, and most of us live in dinghies.
It's a broken system, and the system has been broken for several decades. Some call it plantation capitalism. I call it slavery by another name. It's a system that financially oppresses the majority of Americans, and COVID has revealed how broken the system is for most of us. Jeff Bezos has become the first 200 billionaire in American history, on his way to being the first trillionaire by 2026, and over 300,000 people are dead from a global pandemic. That's the inhumane, corrupt, evil system that we all exist within. The stock market is not the true measure of a healthy economy. Our well-being is a true measure of a healthy economy, and cash flow is a true measure of a healthy economy. We have too many unemployed and underemployed, too many uninsured and underinsured, and this is why we need a federal jobs guarantee, a $15 minimum wage, and reparations for the African American community to rebuild our country in a way that works for everyone.
Now, if these individuals can see this, and if other individuals can see this, and if David and I could see this, how come we received all this negativity by coming back here trying to help in the West Tennessee area? How come so many people was coming to 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255, that was against using resistant type tactics against the Windmill Ministries? It wasn't just about drugs. It wasn't just about conforming and telling people that there's a way, a better way, other than being a dope dealer or a dope taker or an alcoholic. It wasn't just about drugs as far as trying to open up or discover a recovery shelter. The recovery shelter was not just based around suicidal events, and it wasn't just based around biological chemicals that so many people had lost their minds off of. It was based around all of it. Financial despair, equal rights despair, same as other types of events that people out there have been trying to get some sort of a message out to the general public about, but no one wanted to hear them because we had become so stagnant, not only as a community, but as a nation, to the point that nobody wanted to listen to the people that was trying to help them. They looked upon us like we was the black sheep. And the whole time, we was trying to help them. Whenever I gave out my advisories that I gave out while living in Nashville, Tennessee, as far as a bloody road ahead, do you actually believe that I wanted a bloody road ahead? No. That would have been the most craziest, foolish thing in the world. I was trying to warn people about a bloody road ahead pertaining to the atmosphere that was breaking down. And as things was breaking down, it was being looked upon as being the perfect storm of different events that was going to create another event, that was going to create another event, that eventually this domino was going to fall into that domino, and that domino falling into that domino. The Ridgeways, the Sheffields, all the other people, the Cobles, all the other people that resisted Juby coming back here to his own property in 2014, they should be patting me on the back because we had done already discovered the truth, going all the way back to whenever I was out in California working with the 99 percenters against the 1 percenters. This was in 2008. David and I had already discussed this, how the rich was getting richer, how that the system was basically broken as far as minimum wage. The only way that David could get a job, he had to go through some sort of a job training program that wound up taking $2 an hour away from his employment until he remained a permanent employee, give or take, for about 6 months to a year. Who was making the money off of whose sweat and whose tears? Whoever formed that organization here in West Tennessee. Just like whenever you go to the courthouse here in Weakley County, and if you're going to pay for your taxes, or if you're going to pay for your license plate, you have to pay in cash. Because if you don't pay in cash, they'll charge you up to 3% of whatever that your exchange is. Well, let's say I was a multi-millionaire farmer, okay? And my taxes come due because I own 3,000 acres. And my taxes now are $25,000. Do you realize how much money 3% of $25,000 is? I'm not going to be able to walk into the courthouse with $25,000, all $100 bills. But 3% of $25,000, you do the math on how much money that you're going to pay, because they've got some sort of a scam here in this area that if you don't pay by cash, you get charged an extra 3%. There's a lot of restaurants that has literally lost their shirts, or little mama papa gas stations, Little Generals and stuff like that, that because of the exchange of people using their ATM cards or their credit cards, they're getting charged 3%. Well, once more, who's taking the hit on that? Who's taking the hit on that? The person that's operating the store. They're having to deduct that now off the top pertaining to their overhead. Whenever you have a system that has become this corrupt to the point that the rich and the powerful are the only ones that's in control, and you have the judicial system that protects itself whenever one of them winds up making a mistake, they basically barely get patted on the back of the hand towards being punished, but then you're going to attack people like myself that is trying to get the real message out to the people. When you have a system that is this turned upside down, you're going to have sadness and grief and despair in areas like you never, ever could believe or imagine. And that's exactly what has happened pertaining to now the coronavirus that has hit the American people because of so many people that has been lost, so many people that has been on drugs, so many people that has been living from one paycheck to another, that now all of a sudden you pull that rescue biscuit out of their mouth and they'll really realize just exactly where they went wrong. But yet now, do I see anybody apologizing to the founder of the Windmill Ministries, which is the individual speaking to you right now? No. Because it's easier for them to classify me as me being a retard, a nut, a whack job. And the whole time, it wasn't the founder that was a whack job. It was those that was accusing the founder of being a whack job. It's similar towards what went on with Jesus. They was accusing Jesus of Jesus being a manipulator, fraudulent, a liar. They went to Pontius Pilate and said, this man committed blasphemy. He claims to be something that we know that he's not. Well, the very people that was committing blasphemy that day wasn't Jesus Christ. It was the rabbis. It was the holy men. It was the teachers. It was the instructors. It was those that already had a disposition in the communities that they felt like they was in jeopardy of losing, and because of it, they continued to hang on to their ideology, even at the expense of killing an innocent man. And I truly believe that that's exactly what they wanted to do to myself. They wanted to kill the founder of the Windmill Ministries. And even though they didn't have the guts, or they didn't have the balls, they didn't have the courage to actually come out onto the property and gun me down, or do like David, my younger brother, said, Juby, if we was living in the 18th century, leading into the 19th century, they would have done already brought some sort of a KKK, or the Night Riders would have done already come out here and strung both of us up, and they would have burnt this place down to the ground, and they would have hung us by the highest tree. That was what was on my brother's mind while he was trying to work 60 hours a week working for McLean Power in Trenton, Tennessee, because that was the only way that he could basically draw even a halfway decent check. These idiots around here that was attacking David and me had no idea why that they was attacking me. They just knew that we was going to attack Juby. We're going to attack this guy. Even though this guy stands for peace, we're going to blame him for everything. And the blame shouldn't have been blamed upon to the founder of the Windmill Ministries, but the blame should have been blamed upon to the elder class, the ones that could read the Bible, interpret the Bible, understand the Bible, but chose not to because they was either scared or they didn't have a real relationship to begin with. Those are the people that has led us down this road. Those are the people that will stand in front of the Creator, beginning with the Reagans and the Bushes, towards why did you mislead your own people? Why did you think that you was going to be able to overpower or manipulate God's divine will? Now, they can come out with any type of explanation that they want, kind of like the Mayos, David Mayo, there in Milan, Tennessee, that I lived with for 5 years. And he can try to convince himself, well, Juby, I really feel like that if it was a God thing, it would have done already taken off by now. Oh, really? And you're the very people that had an opportunity to have supported the ministry, but chose not to? Once more, you're still trying to throw the beef off onto me. The guilt all thrown to me, the reason why that this thing has went up belly up and upside down. Once more, the Mayos wound up living a good life. They lived in a good house. They drove brand new cars. They live in a nice house today, which I don't have nothing against people working and making a good living, but they wanted for nothing in the past 30, 32, 35 years since all this developed pertaining to biblical Bible prophecy. Not only have they lived a good life, but their sons lived good lives too as well. Unless those that chose to want to squander it or throw it away on drugs or drinking or whatever else that may come along. But the fact of the matter is, you have people that want to stand and point their finger at me and say, well, if it was of God, how come it hadn't already taken off? Do you maybe think it was because of people like yourself is the reason why that it didn't take off? I could go through a list of names beginning in Obion County, Lauderdale County, Lake County, Weakley County, Henry County, Gibson County, Dyer County, Shelby County, Davison County. I could go through a long list of names of people that I have personally knocked on their door, not counting the people in Kentucky and not counting the people in Oklahoma and not counting the people out in Georgia, not counting the people up towards Pennsylvania and Washington, D.C. and New York, spreading out thousands and thousands of dollars worth of material and not getting not one supporter other than maybe a few people that seen, that opened up to the scriptures to realize, my God, what this man is teaching and telling people is the truth. How come they are so dead set in wanting to destroy this individual? The same way with Tommy Moore, the judge here in Weakley County, and Tommy Thomas and the crooked attorneys. You see, their eyes is focused upon to themselves. They don't want to see the destruction of their own party come about whenever it comes to legalizing marijuana, because this is what has fattened their pockets throughout the past 30 plus years, even though the founder of the Windmill Ministries started preaching in 1983 that marijuana should be legalized because it has the high potential of healing qualities. Not because of money. Don't have nothing to do with money pertaining to my opinion about marijuana. It had to do with good health. It had to do with people that couldn't see pertaining to glaucoma. It had to do with people that was having to do chemotherapy that didn't have an appetite to eat towards giving people back their appetites. It had to do with people having convulsions and people having PTSD and people that couldn't control their anger management issues and people that had arthritis and bursitis and God only knows what other healing quality that marijuana could provide for the people. But yet in all the Neils and certain people over in Kenton, Tennessee wanted to demonize me because I believed that marijuana had healing potentials. Who has been the one that's been wrong here? I have said before and I'll say again, this ministry has not failed the people. It's the people that has failed the ministry. Whenever they incarcerated me in 2009 out in Kentucky because I had made gestures towards wanting to destroy or kill a darkly complected individual, Arabic descent, pertaining to him being Lucifer or Satan in the flesh. The judge should have patted me on the back and said, you know what? We've got the same inspirations as you do. We want to see the end to all this corruption. We want to see the end to all this drug abuse. We want to see the end to people being raped and murdered and taken advantage of. We want to see the end towards our country going backwards in the point of all this open sin pertaining to homosexuals and lesbianisms and taking innocent unborn children. We want to support you, Juby, is what the federal court system up in Paducah should have done. But instead of them saying that, they said, you know what? We're a good mind to put a Class E felony on your life because you cannot premeditate somebody else's murder. Oh, really? I said. What I should have said was, well, if that be the case, you need to go back and talk to God, Gabriel, and all the other prophets in the Bible, and you need to go back and talk to John the Revelator, who created, through the Holy Spirit, the book of Revelations. You need to go back and talk to Daniel, and you need to charge those people for premeditated murder. Because ever since that I've been old enough to identify and interpret the Bible, the way that I have interpreted the Bible is that good is greater than evil, that light is greater than darkness. And whenever young Bush went to war with the Iraqi people, his main objective was to try to bring stability to that region, to to destroy the very axis of evil that was creating that type of atmosphere against the impoverished people over in that area to begin with. Has anybody slapped handcuffs around young Bush because that was his primary reason? That was his motive in wanting to go to war that spent over $6 trillion? Whenever you have such of a mixed up group of people that basically don't know if they're coming or going, and whenever you have a group of people that refuses to read the Bible and interpret it the way that the Bible should be interpreted, not part of the Bible, you can't Joel Osteen cherry pick the Bible. You got to read it face value of what it says and how it says it. Whenever you have people that manipulate the Word of God and try to overpower the Word of God, then you have a group of people that has become damned. You have a group of people that has brought on this type of retribution. Let's listen to the rest of this interview because it deems listening to pertaining to where we are right now in the year of the Jubilee in 2020, fixing to walk off into 2021 with all this horror, all this disaster, all this catastrophe that's around us on every aspect of reality that you can think of. Please listen.
You want to reimagine, according to what was written in the Root. You want to reimagine the Democratic Party. Let me quote you, where you say, "I don't think Obama is the standard we should be striving toward." Bowman told the Root. "I think Obama represents a certain demographic of the Democratic Party, but the Democratic Party is a big and diverse tent. I think the Squad and myself represent more of what's happening right now in the party, on the ground, in the streets, particularly with parts of the community that we haven't always engaged very well." Spell that out for me. Who's not represented, and what do you think it should look like?
So during our primary against Elliot Engel, we were able to triple voter turnout and triple turnout amongst young people and people of color. Why? Because we went to Eden Wall housing projects. We went to Boston Secor housing projects. We went to Gun Hill Road. We went to places where the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, many parties, haven't gone in quite some time. People do not see their elected officials enough. They only see them around the time where elected officials want to vote from the people. We have to engage the disengaged. We have to grow the base. Even in this record-setting presidential election, 80 million Americans did not vote. And
what he's saying is you got to pick their heads in figuring out where their heart is. And if you just take it upon to yourself to assume that they're righteous, good people, well, then that's your fault to begin with. You know, I stood in front of Tommy Moore, David and I did. And Tommy Moore said out of his own mouth, standing in his own courtroom, or sitting in his own courtroom, that, Juby, those people down there think that you're the dark horse. They think that you are of the devil. They think that you are Satan. They think that you are monster. You are the monster, Juby. And as I sat there and listened to these false accusations, at the time, there really wasn't a whole lot that I could say about it other than, well, they can believe whatever that they want to believe. And they can falsely accuse me of whatever that they want to falsely accuse me of. Just like us being concerned about 3 children across the street as Donald Ridgeway was basically having an affair with the attendant and all kinds of drug abuse pertaining to a love-hate relationship that was going on. One day I love you, the next day I hate you, pertaining to her lover or her boyfriend across the street, knowing that those children was being involved in an atmosphere that they never should have been involved in. But yet now I get charged for stalking. But according to listen to me carefully, according to Tommy Moore, Judge Tommy Moore in Weakley County, just within the past week, with Tommy Moore being a first grade Baptist, going to the First Baptist Church there in Dresden, Tennessee, finally acknowledged openly for the first time, Juby, I believe you're a good man. Pray for me. We serve the same God. Well, if we serve the same God, how come you turned your back on us whenever we was requesting for you to help us after we contacted the sheriff's department 50 or 60 different times in the span of about a 3-year period? If you was in our corner, like you say that you're in our corner, pertaining to us serving the same God, how come you allowed for the Ridgeway family to take my brother down prior to me coming back here in 2014, in the year 2010, and throwed it out of court after David wanted to press charges against this family, after this family took my brother down and tried to kill him with his own gun? If you claim that we serve the same God, why would have you sat back and allowed for the criminals up there in Martin, Tennessee, that was working under the pretense of, I guess, Chief David Moore, that now is ahead of some other big Caddo over there in Martin, Tennessee? In 2005, why would have you allowed for them to have brought up false charges against me pertaining to falsifying files that basically puts me in the same category as a homegrown terrorist? If you and me are supposed to be on the same team pertaining to serving the same God, how come you have failed in your duties in taking care of one of your citizens right here in your own county? That will be the questions that will be asked whenever Tommy Moore stands in front of God pertaining to the great white throne judgment. And not only will it be Tommy Moore that gets asked that question, but it will be other people involved in this conspiracy, in this resistance movement that has brought this type of hell upon to all of us. They will be asked again and again and again, why did you do this to your own people? Why did you allow for this to go on as long as how it went on? There will be accountability issues after this life, in the hereafter life. And that will be the factor pertaining to the Heavenly Father, either saying, depart from me, for I've never known thee, or come and enter into the joy of the Lord. Because to this day, these people still refuses, listen to me, they still refuse. They're under a sense of denial. They're still in denial about what has occurred here in the Jackson case, in the Windmill Ministries case, of how that they have demonized us and dehumanized us and used the property across the road to weaponize against us, and we never could get Tommy Moore or the courts to even so much as get charges placed upon to our enemy pertaining to either stalking or just a classic charge of disturbing the peace. Nothing. We could not get no satisfaction out of the courts. And you wonder how come I accuse various people of dereliction of duty? Because whenever they put that robe on, they're not only supposed to be protecting the unbelievers, but they're supposed to be protecting the believers. How come the federal judge in Paducah, Kentucky wasn't willing to say, we stand behind you? We want the axes of evil to be destroyed too, Brother Jackson, rather than wanting to press charges upon my life pertaining to premeditated murder. These are events that I can prove. I can validate the telephone calls. I can validate what has went on here. But yet no, I get no movement. I get no, I guess you would call it confirmation pertaining to what has happened here, as I'm watching the death toll continue to rise. Well, it will rise, and people will die in their own sins, and they'll die without a purpose other than dying of a disease, because these people didn't want to stand up for the right purpose in standing up for the righteousness of God. And because they didn't want to stand up for the righteousness of God, the very people that I just got through mentioning, and many, many more, may very well be taken out on account of this disease. And if they're not taken out because of the disease, it's only because God is laying waiting for them to eventually take the mark of the beast, 666, are waiting for their children or their children's children to take the mark of the beast. That way they can see the punishment that they truly deserve, or that they have brought such of a curse upon to their children and their family members. We're talking about a resistance movement that has brought hardship upon to all of us. Right now, we should be experiencing a revival. Right now, we should be experiencing utopia and prosperity. But because certain individuals decided that they was going to do what they done in 1988 after 9 tapes wound up going to the White House, it has put us where we are right now. And I can validate it, including the 9 tapes of various classified, certified mail of correspondence that went on either during Reagan's era or during Bush's era. I've got the proof. We've got the records. I kept up with the mail.
Because they don't trust the system and they don't believe in the system, and they have a right to not trust and believe in the system because historically the system has failed them. So
let's back up again. Let's get all this.
People do not see their elected officials enough. They only see them around the time where elected officials want to vote from the people. We have to engage the disengaged. We have to grow the base. Even in this record-setting presidential election, 80 million Americans did not vote. And it's because they don't trust the system and they don't believe in the system. And they have a right to not trust and believe in the system because historically the system has failed them. So we were able to grow those numbers because we engaged people who have been historically ignored and historically neglected. And if we don't bring those people into the process and give them a seat at the table, we'll continue to perpetuate a system that's oppressive and harmful to tens of millions of Americans.
Congressman-elect Jamal Bowman, I've been looking forward to this conversation. Thank you for joining me. Look forward to having many more with you. Jamal Bowman is the new congressman-elect for New York 16th District. Thank you, sir. California Governor Gavin Newsom just announced his choice to serve the rest of Vice President-elect Kamala Harris's Senate term. He has tapped the state's election chief, Alex Padilla. He's
Once more, whenever you have the rich taking care of the rich, you basically have the exact same thing that Jesus said, the blind leading the blind. Whenever you have the corrupt protecting the corrupt, when you have the wicked protecting the wicked, this is the formula that you have. You have a formula of disaster. And we have the Bushes and the Reagans to thank for this on the top end, on the upper end. Going down on the bottom end, we have the Neils. We have the Damian Crosses. We have other local people that, like I said, I could go down a long list of people that I know personally that we have to thank for this. Now, once more, in the radical, violent behavior that took place out here since I moved back in 2014, only validates what I've been talking about pertaining to neighborhood resistance. And whenever you have this type of resistance, as well as the judicial system that sits idly by and not only allows for it to happen, but turns the tables and says, well, you was stalking. Well, first of all, how can I be stalking the people across from me whenever I live across from those people? It would have been different if I was out there with a gun. It'd have been different if I was out there with a tripod. It'd been different if I was laying wait. What has happened here will be looked upon as being the most gross, unjustifiable act that the Weakley County and the West Tennessee and to the Tennessee behavior, beginning with the governor of this state that tried to declare me as me being a threat to my own people by banning me from federal buildings after I discovered the truth of what went on out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. It will be looked upon as being one of the most shameful, disgraceful acts that people can indulge up into pertaining to what has went on. I'm tired of being tired of people wanting me to reward bad behavior. I'm tired of being criticized, rejected, ridiculed, demonized, and dehumanized for standing up for a holy, righteous, living God. And because of it, I truly believe that that's the reason why that this great sorrow has fallen upon to not only the Tennesseans here in America, but basically the whole nation. Basically the whole planet. God is shaking this planet and allowing for Satan to go forth, severing them as wheat out to kill, steal, and destroy. They thought it was cute towards playing with their Ouija boards. They thought it was cute towards becoming witches and warlocks. They thought it was cute pertaining to the paranormal. Well, let them see how cute it is after this disease kills them. And they wind up on the other side of the gulf, screaming and yelling, I'm in hell, I'm in hell. Please help me, I'm in hell. Let's see how cute it is then, whenever these same people that wanted to stand up with such of a resistance type movement and standing up and sticking their chest out, wanting to defy the very holy God that raised his very son, Jesus Christ, from the grave. Let's see how cute it is then, whenever they're screaming and yelling as they're dying and drifting off into eternity. Do I like to give a message like this right here at Christmas time? No, I do not. Is this an uplifting message for the saints? Absolutely. Is it a degrading message for the wicked? Hell yes. And I wanted to continue to rattle in their minds and in their hearts towards just exactly how degrading that this is, not coming from me, but coming from the very living God himself out of the Bible. All I am is just the mouthpiece. All I am is just the messenger. God inspired for me to give you this message, just like these people has inspired you to bring forth their message in regards to these interviews. Once more, let's listen to this one more time.
So during our primary against Elliot Engel, we were able to triple voter turnout and triple turnout amongst young people and people of color. Why? Because we went to Eden Wall housing projects. We went to Boston Secor housing projects. We went to Gun Hill Road. We went to places where the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, many parties, haven't gone in quite some time. People do not see their elected officials enough. They only see them around the time where elected officials want to vote from the people. We have to engage the disengaged. We have to grow the base. Even in this record-setting presidential election, 80 million Americans did not vote. And it's because they don't trust the system and they don't believe in the system. And they have a right to not trust and believe in the system because historically the system has failed them. So we were able to grow those numbers because we engaged people who have been historically ignored and historically neglected. And if we don't bring those people into the process and give them a seat at the table, we'll continue to perpetuate a system that's oppressive and harmful to tens of millions of Americans.
Congressman-elect Jamal Bowman, I've been looking forward to this conversation. Thank you for joining me. Look forward to having many more with you. Jamal Bowman is the new congressman-elect for New York 16th District. Thank you, sir. California Governor Gavin Newsom just announced his choice to serve the rest of Vice President-elect
Shalom and good luck to all of us. I have plans of being at the table. Not man-made table. Not this worldly table. But God's table. I have plans of hearing my Heavenly Father say, well done, well done, well done, thy good and faithful servant. For you have been faithful over a few things. Come, enter into the joy of the Lord, for I will make thee ruler over many. Good luck to all of us, and shalom.